My name is Valeria. I am with Nicaraguan Civil Society, and I am here on World Press Freedom Day to talk about the situation of journalists in Nicaragua. It's been a year and journalists have been detained and killed for reporting the truth, for speaking out against the human rights abuses that's occurring at the hand of the Nicaraguan government. Right now we have 2 journalists, and the only female journalist in the Americas who is a political prisoner, and her name is Lucia Pineda, and she has been in jail over 130 days for speaking out about what was going on in Nicaragua and telling the public the truth. So on this World Press Freedom Day, I urge all political leaders to stand with Lucia and Miguel Mora, who's also the director of the independent news channel in Nicaragua, who is also imprisoned and beaten in jail. And we ask people here to support press freedom, to support freedom of speech, and to support the people's right for information and to report the truth, and for governments to understand that democracy cannot occur without journalism and independent media, and that reporting the truth is not a crime, being a journalist is not a crime, demanding justice and democracy is not a crime, and you cannot silence the truth by imprisoning journalists. Thank you.
Your Excellency, Ms. Maria Fernanda Espinosa Garcés, President of the 73rd Session of the United Nations General Assembly. Your Excellency, Ms. Amal Moudalali, Permanent Representative of Lebanon and Vice Chairperson of the United Nations Committee on Information. Your Excellency, Ms. Fatima Kiari Mohammed, Permanent Observer of the African Union to the United Nations. Ms. Valeria Robeco, President of the United Nations Correspondents Association, Excellencies, distinguished ambassadors, members of the media and NGO communities, youth participants, ladies and gentlemen. Good morning and happy World Press Freedom Day. My name is Alison Smale and I'm the Under-Secretary General for Global Communications. Today is an important day. As a former journalist, the cause of press freedom has long been close to my heart. First, it is my honor to invite Her Excellency, Ms. Maria Fernanda Espinosa Garcés, President of the General Assembly, to deliver her message. Excellency, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, dear Alison. Let me acknowledge Your Excellency Amal Moudalali, Permanent Representative of Lebanon to the United Nations and Vice Chair of the General Assembly Committee on Information, Excellency Fatima Kiari Mohammed, Permanent Observer of the African Union to the United Nations, dear Alison Smale, Undersecretary General for Global Communications, and dear Valeria Robeco, President of the UN Correspondents Association, Excellencies, members of the media, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen. Just so for you to acknowledge this beautiful panel of all women, you know, in this very important Press Freedom Day. And I am indeed very grateful to the Department for Global Communications and UNESCO for organizing this event to mark the World Press Freedom Day and for giving me the opportunity to address you today. I do so, and I have to say, with a heavy heart. Last year, the UNESCO Observatory recorded the murder of 99 journalists. Hundreds of media workers have been intimidated or imprisoned. Reporters Without Borders chose to give its 2019 World Press Freedom Index the title, A Cycle of Fear. That doesn't give us great hope. This day should be a celebration of journalists, editors, photographers, filmmakers, publishers, policymakers, of all those who contribute to and create the conditions for a free, pluralistic, and independent media. But it has also become a sobering occasion as the media space shrinks across the world, as restrictive laws and policies are enacted. It has become a chilling occasion as media workers and their families are subjected to threats and reprisals. And in so many fields, women are disproportionately affected, contending with sexist abuse and sexual harassment online, as well as physical sexual violence, including rape. Too often these attacks go unpunished. At a time when nationalist populism and extremism are on the rise, when hate speech, rumors, and lies can spread like wildfire, we need journalism, high-quality journalism, independent and diverse media more than ever. It is journalists who shine a spotlight on abuse and corruption. It is journalists who tell the stories that need to be told. It is journalists who can give voice to those whom nobody listens. It is journalists who hold up a mirror to society. And if we don't like what we see, our response should be to address the issues, not shoot the messenger. Dear friends, I commend UNESCO to its effort to defend the media from attacks, to support a free, vibrant, and diverse press, and to protect and promote press freedom, working with governments, regulators, media organizations, and non-government organizations. And to all the journalists out there working hard to uncover the truth and to cover the stories, bad and good, that we need to hear. And I thank you. Have a very happy Press Freedom Day. Thank you. Thank you, Alison.
Thank you, Excellency, for your poignant and strong thoughts on the value of a free press and ensuring the safety of media workers. As President of the General Assembly, you have another pressing engagement to attend, so you must leave us at this time. Thank you so much for coming. The Secretary-General, Antonio Guterres, regrets that he, too, could not join us today. So he has sent us this video message.
A free press is essential for peace, justice, sustainable development and human rights. No democracy is complete without access to transparent and reliable information. It is the cornerstone for building fair and impartial institutions, holding leaders accountable, and speaking truth to power. And this is especially true during election seasons. Yet, while technology has transformed the ways in which we receive and share information, sometimes it is used to mislead public opinion or to fuel violence and hatred. Civic space has been shrinking worldwide at an alarming rate. And with anti-media rhetoric on the rise, so too are violence and harassment against journalists, including women. I am deeply troubled by the growing number of attacks and the culture of impunity. According to UNESCO, almost 100 journalists were killed in 2018. Hundreds are imprisoned. And when media workers are targeted, societies as a whole pay a price. On World Press Freedom Day, I call on all to defend the rights of journalists whose efforts help us to build a better world for all. Thank you.
Taking note of the powerful messages we've already heard, I'd like to remind you that this year's theme for World Press Freedom Day is Media for Democracy, Journalism and Elections in Times of Disinformation. Our discussion will focus on the importance of press freedom and freedom of expression to the foundations of democracy in a digital age. This will be a timely and crucial discussion as journalism still faces a multitude of threats, including censorship, intimidation, and direct physical attacks against the lives and livelihoods of journalists and media workers. Today, we stand in solidarity with journalists and media workers. We remember those who have been killed in the line of duty, and we reaffirm our commitment to the right of freedom of expressions as well as a free, independent, and pluralistic media. An independent media is central to democracy. Article 19 of the Universal Declaration of Human Rights states that the right of freedom of opinion and expression includes the right to seek and receive, quote, information and ideas through any media, unquote. In fact, access to information and the treatment of media personnel are reflected in the targets and indicator of Goal 16 of the Sustainable Development Goals. These fundamental rights of expression and to opinion could not be more crucial in elections. When the press operates unencumbered, it informs and helps to keep governments accountable to their citizens. We now inhabit a digital world where internet access, social media platforms, and smartphones create instant access to breaking news. In this context, the moniker fake news has become a catchphrase to discredit journalists and the news stories they report on. As I mentioned during a panel discussion earlier this week, I cannot emphasize enough that fake news is a misnomer. If it's fake, it cannot possibly be news. Emerging technologies have opened the door to new opportunities to revolutionize civic engagement and elections. At the same time, burgeoning challenges require vigorous and innovative solutions to protect these universal principles, as well as our democratic processes and institutions. The media must be able to operate freely across the globe, for when it does, it can protect democracy. Each of us, no matter where we live, shares in this responsibility to protect, uphold, and defend these freedoms. This year marks the 26th anniversary of World Press Freedom Day, a day proclaimed by the UN General Assembly in 1993. The raison d'être for the day is as critical as ever. The digital era connects us together in ways that we could not have dreamed of only a few decades ago. Arguably, in a way, we are all citizen journalists. In this spirit of interconnectedness, I ask you to never forget the sacrifices that are being made by professional journalists everywhere and every day to deliver accurate and transparent information about the world in which we live. Thank you so much for listening, and I am sure the sessions ahead will provide engaging and dynamic opportunities for discussion. Those who cannot be here physically present with us can add their voices via social media using the handles and hashtags you will see on screen. Now it is my pleasure to introduce Her Excellency Ms. Amal Moudalali, Permanent Representative of Lebanon to the United Nations and Vice Chair of UN Committee on Information. Thank you, Your Excellency, for joining us today. You have the floor.
Thank you very much, and thank you everybody for coming. This means that you really care. I thank UNESCO and the Department of Global Communications for organizing this important and timely event on the occasion of World Freedom Day. I'm honored to be here with the PGA, who just left us, and also with USG, Ms. Alison Smale, and with my sister, Her Excellency Fatima Mohammed, the Ambassador of the African Union, the United Nations, and Ms. Valerie Robeco, ANSA News Agency and President of the United Nations Correspondents Association. I would also like to welcome here among us the former spokesman for the United Nations, Mr. Samir Sambar, who launched this day. Thank you. Freedom of press and freedom of speech has been very personal for me. It's so personal that it defined me and a generation of Lebanese as well as Arab journalists for over 4 decades. It all started with a hand dipped in acid. Lebanese journalist Salim Lawzi was the most prominent journalist in the Arab world back then, when I was dreaming of studying journalism and becoming a journalist in the early 80s. Then he was kidnapped and disappeared. When he was found killed, it was not killing him that shocked the people. It was his right hand. It was dipped in acid and destroyed. Journalists then wrote in longhand and did not use computers. The message for every journalist and anyone aspiring to be a journalist was in his hand. It simply said, "This is what happens to you when you write what we don't like." In the last decades, the media and the world of communications went through a sea change. The internet entered our lives, and as Bill Gates put it, gave voice to people who would never have been heard. We started living in an instant world, and the news shrunk to 140 characters, spreading at a dizzying speed. The tablet and the cell phone made every person with one an instant journalist, and the media was never the same again. It changed what we know about the world and how we know it, making every news story a local one with the same speed and intensity. That few years ago would have taken days or months to reach us. The power of the media and its reach made it as important in society and in politics as governments, if not more sometimes. We thought the media would live its golden age. We thought with that power of the medium, we get immunity for its messengers. But unfortunately, not much has changed for journalists and for freedom of the press the world over. Actually, freedom of the press is living some of the worst days in terms of threats and violence against journalists. In 2018, and as the PGA mentioned, killing the messenger was the preferred way to get rid of the message, and violence against journalists reached unprecedented levels and prompted the New York Times to call it the worst time in recent history in which to be a journalist. Last year, and according to Reporters Without Borders, 348 journalists were detained, 80 were killed. This is 89% increase over the year before, and 60 were held hostages. But what was unsettling was the fact that attacks on journalists were on the rise everywhere in the world, including in the traditionally safe and liberal democracies that has the rights of freedom of expression enshrined in its constitutions. But it was not only violence. Inflammatory rhetoric against journalists reached unprecedented levels of incitement also. Trust in the media is also a flat low at 44%, according to Reuters Institute for the Study of Journalism. Actually, in the United States, the Knight Foundation found that 90% of adults say their trust in the news media has fallen in the last decade. We also live in the age of fake news and disinformation. Actors from governments to political parties and groups and individuals use the social media to disseminate hyper-partisan content and sometimes hate. This is very bad news for all of us, especially for democracy, for our freedoms, for our politics, for our lives, and for the future of democracy everywhere. The media is very important for liberty and for our freedoms. It's hard to think of a free society or free people if their right to know the facts is taken away from them. It's the media and journalists who help us make choices, educated ones, whether in politics or elections, by giving us the facts and shedding light on the truth. This is how democracy thrives, through informed and enlightened citizens who make the right choice after studying all the options and knowing all the facts. That's why the Washington Post is right to choose its slogan, "Democracy dies in darkness." I was impressed on a trip to Roosevelt Island yesterday by how the late President Roosevelt put freedom of speech and expression as the first pillar of his 4 essential human freedoms that the future world should be founded on. This was 1941. It is in this building where the will of the world is reflected and gathered that these pillars of the foundation of the future of our world should be strengthened and maintained. It's here that we need to insist, through speaking out and through binding resolutions and through example, to defend the defenders of our freedoms, the journalists, and safeguard press freedom, freedom of speech, freedom of expression, and every freedom, freedom of worship, freedom from want, and freedom from fear, to quote the former president. This is the world that we want to live in. This is the world where democracy, human rights, and dignity can live and flourish. I thank you.
Thank you, Your Excellency, for a passionate and strong defense of the reasons why we need a free press. It is now my honor to invite Her Excellency Ms. Fatemeh Kyari Mohammed, Permanent Observer of the African Union to the United Nations, to deliver her message. Excellency, the floor is yours.
Thank you. Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, permit me to stand on existing protocols. Let me begin by thanking UNESCO and the UN Department of Global Communications for bringing us together here at the UN headquarters on this World Press Freedom Day. There are almost 100 events taking place worldwide to mark this important day. I'd also like to thank the USG, the PGA, and my sister Amal for her very, very powerful remarks highlighting the realities of the challenges faced by journalists today. I think the stories and the figures that you presented really bring the reality home. In fact, as I'm sitting here today, the global conference event has been taking place since Wednesday at the African Union headquarters in Addis Ababa. And the conference is jointly organized by UNESCO, the government of the Federal Republic of Ethiopia, and the African Union Commission, which I represent. This is the first time a regional organization partners with UNESCO on this endeavor. Today, as we celebrate Press Freedom Day, which marks the anniversary of the Windhoek Declaration adopted on May 3rd in 1991 by African journalists as a call for an independent and pluralistic African press, the UNESCO General Conference then recommended this International Day to the UN General Assembly, who proclaimed it in 1993. The theme for World Press Freedom Day in 2019, Media for Democracy, Journalism, and Elections in Times of Disinformation, concerns the current challenges faced by the media in times of elections and the growing prevalence of disinformation, along with the media's potential to support democracy, peace, and reconciliation. This commemoration theme is closely interlinked with the objectives of the UN Sustainable Development Goals, as well as the African Union's Agenda 2063, which under Aspiration 3 envisions an Africa of good governance, democracy, respect for human rights, justice, and the rule of law, and specifically earmarks under it a specific goal on democratic values, practices, universal principles of human rights, justice, and the rule of law entrenched. This is one of the priority areas to be realized by 2023. Similarly, the SDG 16 underscores the importance of public access to information and fundamental freedoms. This includes freedom of expression. SDG 16 recognizes that peace and democracy are preconditions for equitable and sustainable development. When freedom of expression and safety of journalists are protected, the media can play a vital role in preventing conflict and in supporting peaceful democratic processes. These outcomes are conditions for the realization of Africa's Agenda 2063 as well. The SDGs themselves encapsulate media's potential to promote peaceful, just, and inclusive societies. SDG Target 16.10 urges UN member states to ensure public access to information and protect fundamental freedoms in accordance with national legislation and international agreements. The two indicators to follow progress under Target 16.10 cover the safety of journalists and the legal and political guarantees to access information. These indicators show that under the UN Agenda for Sustainable Development, the institutions of a free and safe press are a substantive component of peaceful societies. It follows that a free and safe press must be able to access and disseminate information of public interest without fear of attack. Since today we will be looking into how the digital era is affecting electoral communications, it is important to also consider what can be done to counter rhetorical and other attacks on journalism, including during elections. One effect of aggressive rhetoric is to blur the line between legitimate critique of media and naked threats which violate the right of journalists to exercise freedom of expression. Yet, the safety of journalists is fundamental to whether an election can be considered as free and fair. Rapid political and judicial responses are needed at all times to address impunity for crimes against journalists. and these are particularly relevant during an election period. Recent resolutions at the UN Human Rights Council and UNESCO have urged member states to create monitoring mechanisms under the SDG framework in order to track the safety of journalists. The importance of having free and safe professional journalism in an election is highlighted against the background of social media and social messaging where disinformation flourishes. Artificial intelligence is already being applied in social media content moderation. Automated chatbots are delivering propaganda material. These raise questions of hidden agenda-setting influence. Emerging debates about the ethical, technological, political, social, and legal implications of the use of AI needs to be linked to freedom of expression broadly and in elections in particular. On the positive side, however, digital technologies are enhancing the right to information, which is also an important issue for elections. The African Commission on Human and People's Rights has developed broad guidelines relevant to this topic. These recommend steps to enhance information access by election management bodies, political parties, and candidates, as well as regulatory bodies that cover media and internet operations. Transparency proposals are also made for internet companies and for media institutions. In sum, these matters all impact on existing policies and regulations for elections and for communications related to the internet. UNESCO's value of internet universality promotes an internet based on human rights, openness, and accessibility, and it's underpinned by multi-stakeholder participation, known as the Rome Principles. This holistic and inclusive approach to internet governance draws in media, civil society, media regulation bodies, internet companies, governments, and others as stakeholders. Given the value of the internet for both reliable journalism and official communications, and for voters to be informed as well as act as watchdogs over processes, it is important to avoid the extreme step of cutting off internet access during elections. To protect the integrity of communications around an election, abuses and problems can be dealt with in proportionate and legal ways without disrupting connectivity as such. In conclusion, let me emphasize on behalf of the African Union and UNESCO that free, independent, and professional journalism, both online and offline, serves as an essential role in democracies. It provides information that allows citizens to make informed decisions inside and outside the voting booth. It holds the powerful to account for the integrity, peace, and fairness of an election. Journalism can also contribute to the electoral agenda by requiring politicians to respond to the public and to focus on the subjects of real public interest. These subjects include the SDGs, a common cause that is agreed by the global community, which range from advancing peace and human rights through to ensuring cultural diversity, gender equality, combating poverty, creating sustainable cities, and countering climate change. During times of conflict, journalism can be a beacon in a storm of information where unchecked lies are disseminated and emotions are whipped up to the detriment of a culture of peaceful conflict resolution. In reconciliation processes, conflict-sensitive journalism can play a pivotal role. It can bridge divides through accurate reporting, break down stereotypes, cover human stories, and present solutions. Such journalism can help prevent polarization, violence, and war. Yesterday, in Addis Ababa, the 2019 UNESCO Guillermo Kano World Press Freedom Prize was awarded to Reuters journalists Kiao Sao and Waloni, I hope I'm pronouncing their names right, following the recommendation of an international jury of media professionals. UNESCO has also launched a global media campaign called Defend Journalism to promote journalism that debunks falsehoods, uses verified sources, and counters disinformation. World Press Freedom Day is a major opportunity to advance the agenda of deepening democracy and sustainable development in digital times. I therefore call on you to share this message and promote the campaign on your social media with the hashtag that you see all over this room, World Press Freedom Day. I thank you for your attention.
Thank you, Excellency, for that really powerful and detailed defense of the rights of journalists and the media and the role that they can play. Now let's turn to the practitioner. Our next speaker is Ms. Valeria Robeco from ANSA News Agency. She is president of the United Nations Correspondent Association. Ms. Robeco.
Abdullah Ananzai, Abdul Manan Argand, Abdul Rahman Ismail Yassin, Abdullah Al-Qadri, Abdullah Mire Ashi, Achyutananda Sau, Ahmed Abu Hussein, Ahmed Azize, Alexander Rastoguyev, Ali Salimi, Angel Eduardo Gaona, Awil Dair Salad, Bashar Al-Attar, Carlos Dominguez Rodriguez, Chandan Tiwari, Gerald Fishman, Ghazi Razuli, Amaud Al-Jaid, Ibrahim Al-Munjar, Jairo Souza, Amal Khashoggi, Ian Kuchak, Jefferson Puriza Lopez, John McNamara, Juan Javier Ortega Reyes, Kamel Abu Al-Walid, Kirill Radchenko, Leobardo Vázquez Atzin, Leslie Ann Pamela Montenegro del Real, Mahram Durrani, Mario Leonel Gomez Sanchez, Mohammad Al-Qadasi, Mohammad Salim Angar, Musa Abdul Karim, Mustafa Salama, Naveen Nishal, Noroz Ali Rajabi, Obeida Abu Omar, Omar Ezi Mohammad, Orkan Zemal, Paul Rivas Bravo, Raed Fares, Ramiz Amadi, Rob Iasen, Sabaun Kakar, Salim Talash, Samim Faramarz, Sandeep Sharma, Shah Marai, Shuyat Bukhari, Sohail Khan, Wendy Winters, Iyar Muhammad Toki, Yaser Murtaya. Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, the colleagues I just mentioned are the journalists killed in 2018 according to Committee to Protect Journalists. There is no more time for words. We need actions. As President of the United Nations Correspondent Association, I would like to point out the two main issues that keep our profession between a rock and a hard place. Journalists are threatened, and a growing number of colleagues are killed. At the same time, we are threatened by the diffusion of fake news, which has not only diminished public trust, but also becomes a lever for autocratic regimes to attack and persecute us. According to the 2019 World Press Freedom Index, recently released by Reporters Without Borders, hostility towards journalists across the globe is growing. Authoritarian regimes continue to tighten their grip on media organizations, leading to an increase in hatred and fear haunting media workers. Furthermore, journalists in democratic and free nations are also under threat. Essentially, the climate that journalists work in has deteriorated worldwide, and journalism can be an extremely dangerous profession. Last November, the UN Secretary General underlined that in just over a decade, more than 1,000 reporters have been murdered or killed while on the job, and many more have been persecuted, arbitrarily arrested, intimidated, injured, or harassed. Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, freedom of speech, not only for the press, but for everyone, is not a gift. It is a human right that must be protected by governments. I echo past appeals by the Secretary General in calling for governments to protect journalists and to strengthen press freedom. But that's not all. Today, I ask the United Nations to make a step forward in addressing the protection of journalism and journalists all over the world by appointing a UN Special Representative for the protection of journalists. Today, UNCA feels more than ever its role as a link between politics and diplomacy that takes shape in their multifaceted relationship between the United Nations and journalism, and its function of communication between the work carried on throughout the UN and its agencies and the work of media that has been called upon to carry out the function of observer and arbiter of such activities. This function confronts not only the risk on the personal safety of journalists, but also the risk surrounding the reliability of information, of that which today is the phenomenon of fake news. The news media landscape has changed profoundly over the past decades. There has been a critical increase in the reach of journalism and social media throughout digital sources, but on the other hand, fake news is accelerating. The democratic tool that is internet has turned out to be a double-edged sword. On one hand, it helps diffusion, but on the other hand, it encourages the creation of niche areas that not only disinform, but reinforce prejudices. The recent new civil war in Libya has shown day by day how conflicts can be conducted not only with weapons and soldiers, but also with disinformation and fake news. Furthermore, political contests today have been deeper contaminated by disinformation and misinformation. There is much more, such as the manipulation of social media and their use as a weapon of mass disinformation, of which ultimately authentic and transparent information becomes the victim itself. There is a risk that powerful actors are exploiting fake news to suppress the real media. In today's context of disinformation, the risk is in fact that people believe whatever content is supported by their social network. And this concerns first and foremost political elections. For these reasons, facing the dissemination of fake news is an imperative for journalism. And it is also an opportunity to prove the importance of new and traditional media and their ability to provide verifiable information in the public interest. This without disregarding the fact that to maintain an open and democratic system, it is important that governments, businesses, and consumers work together. Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, this is the paradigm within which the debate on freedom and accuracy of information can no longer ignore a key figure such as a UN Special Representative for the Protection of Journalists. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Rebecca, for bringing in that new call for a UN representative. Thank you. I would now like to call upon His Excellency Monsieur François Delattre, Permanent Representative of France and Co-Chair of the United Nations Member States Group of Friends on Protection of Journalists. Excellency.
Bonjour mes chers amis, Madame la Présidente, Madame la Secrétaire Générale Adjointe, Excellences, Mesdames, Messieurs et chers amis, j'ai le plaisir de m'adresser à vous aujourd'hui au nom des 21 États membres du groupe des Amis des Nations Unies pour la protection des journalistes, co-présidé par la France, la Grèce et la Lituanie. C'est donc au nom de ces 21 États que je voudrais exprimer nos chaleureux remerciements à l'UNESCO et au département de la communication de l'ONU pour l'organisation de cet événement important célébrant la 26e journée internationale de la liberté de la presse. Cette journée nous rappelle combien la liberté d'expression, y compris bien sûr pour les membres des médias indépendants, est indispensable à la bonne gouvernance, à la prise de décision éclairée, à la démocratie, aux processus électoraux libres et équitables et à la responsabilité des gouvernements. Alors que nous honorons aujourd'hui, en leur rendant hommage, les journalistes emprisonnés et tués dans l'exercice de leurs fonctions, cette journée est l'occasion de nous pencher sur l'état de la liberté de la presse ainsi que de la sécurité des journalistes dans le monde. Et dans le contexte difficile que nous connaissons tous et qui vient d'être rappelé, il est plus important que jamais de réaffirmer notre attachement aux principes fondamentaux d'un journalisme libre, pluraliste, indépendant et sûr, ainsi qu'à la protection nécessaire des médias contre toute atteinte à leur indépendance. La communauté internationale, nous tous, au fond, sommes les témoins des dangers croissants qui pèsent sur la liberté de la presse dans le monde, sous l'effet conjugué de la détérioration des conditions de sécurité, d'un contexte médiatique souvent de plus en plus répressif et de la réduction de l'espace de la société civile. Le volume croissant de désinformation et les discours publics de plus en plus polarisants menacent le déroulement pacifique des élections et la liberté de la presse. C'est le cas aussi des attaques violentes dont nous sommes les témoins contre l'information basée sur les faits, que ce soit en ligne ou que ce soit dans les médias traditionnels. Ces phénomènes, mes chers amis, conjuguent leurs effets pour contribuer à la perte de confiance du public dans les institutions politiques établies et dans les organes de presse. La désinformation, la répression, le harcèlement et la violence contre les journalistes ajoutent de nouvelles restrictions au champ des droits de l'homme et des libertés fondamentales. Et en ces temps troublés, il n'en est que plus crucial pour chacune et chacun d'entre nous de défendre la liberté d'expression sous toutes ses formes. Conscients des défis à relever, de l'ampleur de ces défis, les 21 États du groupe des amis réaffirment leur engagement en faveur de la protection des médias et de leur potentiel de soutien à la démocratie et à la paix, et soulignent leur contribution fondamentale à la responsabilisation des gouvernements et à la transparence des élections. La création du groupe des amis pour la protection des journalistes en 2016 trouve son origine dans le sentiment d'urgence partagé par les États membres fondateurs à promouvoir une meilleure application du droit international des droits de l'homme en matière de protection des journalistes. Nous étions et restons préoccupés par le fait qu'en dépit de progrès significatifs dans les systèmes juridiques internationaux, des lacunes importantes subsistent et que le cadre juridique est de surcroît contredit par la réalité à laquelle sont confrontés les journalistes et les personnels des médias au quotidien. Ces préoccupations sont naturellement partagées par d'autres gouvernements et nous saluons l'arrivée récente du Ghana et du Royaume-Uni au sein de ce groupe des amis. Aujourd'hui, le groupe reste plus déterminé que jamais à promouvoir le respect des droits de l'homme et des libertés fondamentales, notamment par la mise en œuvre des résolutions sur la protection des journalistes, ainsi que du plan d'action des Nations Unies adopté sous les auspices de l'UNESCO. Nous sommes particulièrement reconnaissants au secrétaire général des Nations Unies pour le leadership dont il a fait preuve à cet égard et pour la mise en place du réseau des points focaux au sein du système des Nations Unies. Le groupe continue et continuera de travailler en étroite collaboration avec l'ensemble des entités des Nations Unies, les représentants des médias bien sûr, et les organisations non gouvernementales. Les États membres du groupe des amis demeurent fermement attachés, et le sont de longue date, à l'indépendance des médias et au respect de leurs obligations et engagements internationaux en matière de liberté d'expression. À ce titre, les membres du groupe sont attachés notamment à la liberté de rechercher, recevoir et diffuser des informations, à la mise en œuvre des initiatives nationales en ce sens et au partage de bonnes pratiques allant du renforcement des cadres juridiques nationaux aux activités les plus diverses garantissant la sécurité des journalistes et des professionnels des médias plus largement. Des médias libres et indépendants sont la pierre angulaire de la gouvernance démocratique. Ils jouent notamment un rôle essentiel dans l'identification des violations des droits de l'homme et des abus et dans la promotion de la lutte contre l'impunité. Nous apprécions hautement la contribution de tous les journalistes qui risquent leur liberté et leur vie pour une information indépendante et nous restons et resterons pleinement engagés à les soutenir dans leur mission essentielle. Nous apportons, et je conclurai par là, notre soutien résolu aux efforts de l'UNESCO et des organisations internationales et locales pour promouvoir la protection des journalistes, leurs droits et libertés, et à tous les États membres pour promouvoir un environnement dans lequel les journalistes peuvent exercer leur métier sans crainte de représailles. Nous le savons tous, l'enjeu est crucial. Alors, mes chers amis, vive la liberté de la presse. Je vous remercie.
Merci bien, Votre Excellence, pour votre défense de la liberté de la presse. I thank everybody gathered here and watching live stream for participating this morning. I believe that Afghanistan has asked for the floor. If the representative of Afghanistan is here, yes. Please proceed.
Thank you very much. First of all, we wish to thank UNESCO and the UN Department of Global Communications for organizing this important event on World Press Freedom Day, and the panelists also for the presentations. This event and many others taking place around the world is indeed a tribute to the efforts and sacrifices of journalists and media personnel in promoting democracy. As such, the media plays an important role in building a global landscape grounded in the rule of law. Afghanistan's democratic experience over the past 18 years is indeed a testament to the way in which the media helps consolidate democratic values and principles in society. The emergence of a vibrant media sector is among our main achievements since 2001. We have invested heavily on this issue, knowing full well that an independent media is vital to the long-term democratic development of our country. Afghanistan has held consecutive presidential and parliamentary elections since 2001, each of which has provided us the opportunity for our people to choose their future political destiny. In all elections, the media has been an important conduit between various democratic political forces, including candidates, political parties, civil society, and the people. The media has helped shape a healthy political discourse and also identify gaps that enable further improvements to the electoral processes, which further consolidates democracy. As we approach presidential elections this coming September, the media will continue to play its important role in ensuring that all candidates are able to be heard and that the outcome of the process reflects the will of the people. The role of the media is also essential in support of peace processes. The wide nexus of skilled and courageous Afghan journalists are among the key stakeholders involved in our peace efforts currently underway with the Taliban. The media is keeping the public aware of developments in the peace process and also helping highlight the views and demands of all Afghans on key issues in this regard, especially on preserving the democratic gains of the past 18 years. Having said that, attacks against journalists in Afghanistan regrettably continue as terrorist and extremist groups seek to undermine our democracy and the very visible progress in our free and independent media sector. Last week, we commemorated the first year anniversary of the 30 April 2018 attack, which killed 10 journalists who were on site covering a previous attack. The deliberate attack on the group of journalists marked a crime against humanity. More broadly, more than 50 journalists have been killed in Afghanistan over the past 5 years alone. The protection of journalists and enabling them to operate in a free environment is a core priority for our government. As such, impunity for crimes against journalists is deemed a violation of the core principles of our Constitution, our penal code, and other national legislation. Protection is also being advocated at the highest levels of government. Several presidential decrees have been issued calling for decisive action to investigate and prosecute all cases to ensure accountability for all crimes against journalists. Various institutions, including the security sector and the Attorney General's office, are taking decisive action on this issue. More concretely, we have, as of late, tried 54 cases of violence against journalists in our judicial institutions. Our protection measures also include the creation of a commission on access to information and a joint committee with the media to monitor cases of violence against journalists. We have also formed the Journalist Support Fund to make sure that the needs of the victims of crimes and their families are met. As we commemorate World Press Freedom Day, let us all strive to further empower and protect journalists and media personnel around the world as a priority for the benefit of democracy, peace, and development worldwide. Afghanistan remains a committed partner in this endeavor. Thank you.
Thank you very much for that powerful reminder of what sacrifices are being made in the name of the free press and free elections. Before concluding this first segment, I would like to thank UNESCO expressly for joining the Department of Global Communications in organizing this event. I now invite my friend and colleague, Mr. Maher Nasser, Director from the Outreach Division of the Department of Global Communications, and our distinguished speakers to the podium for the interactive segment of today's program. Thank you so very much for being with us this far. Thank you. It was a great pleasure to read the names. I should have